Welcome to the Straight from the Source's Mouth podcast. Frank talk about sex and dating.
Hello, Tamara here. Welcome to the show. Today's guest is Eric Fitzmedrud, a licensed psychologist and a member of the American Association of Sexual Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. Thanks for joining me, Eric.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I think this will be interesting, especially some more stuff we're going to get into a little later. But I know you specialize in helping men improve their sex lives. And how and why did you start doing that?
I think that, like a lot of therapists, I began really with myself. I started taking every course that I could in my graduate school process that related to sexuality to try to better understand my own sexuality and some of the things that I had done that maybe I wasn't proud of or that I didn't understand about why they turned me on. And that led me to having kind of a good theoretical background in sexuality. And when I began working with couples, I found that I could kind of understand and translate back and forth across both experiences very well, especially helping men to understand their sexuality and understand the emotions connected to it so that they could improve their relationships in a particular way.
Okay. And I can guess that part of it is like the more emotional side that women generally are looking for, or like we feel seen and heard and want the eye contact and all the cuddles and all the stuff. Is that part of what you mean, or is that just part of it?
That is a part of it, to understand that for many women, the experience of sexuality is mediated by the emotional relationship. But it's also to help men understand the nature of their desire better. So a lot of men come into my practice not understanding the difference between desire and a need, really feeling that if they don't get sex, that they won't be able to have connection. For many of them, that's true, but only because they haven't learned how to make a connection. Helping men understand that desire is not a need, and that just because you have a thought or an interest in something doesn't mean that you will be physically or mentally ill if you don't get that need fulfilled. It helps men to put their sexual interests and desires in maybe a little more of an appropriate place in their lives, and to help elevate up their desire to connect with their partners out of only being a sexual desire.
Yeah, because I know you mentioned like sexual entitlement and consent. And I know I just saw a thing on Facebook where a woman said basically her husband like has to have it all the time, and she's like doesn't want to and just has to give in at this point. And she's asking like, what should she do about that? So it sounds like a similar kind of.
Yeah, when all of a man's human connection takes place in his relationship and in sex in his relationship, then he does get really driven around, I need to connect with you. He may not be touched, hugged, held, seen, witnessed in any other space in his life. He may not know really how to experience his humanity without being sexual. But when men expand out of sexuality for their human connection, when they have friends, community members, people they can open up to about their fears, worries, and aspirations, including, of course, their partner, then suddenly sexuality does often still take on a high interest for a lot of men, but it shifts from I need sex in order to feel connected as a human being to, hey, I have a gift that I'd like to give. I have sexual desire. I would like to give you pleasure. I would like to experience new and fun things. Can we try that? It shifts from becoming a demand to an offer. And that offer tends to be much more attractive.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah. And so what are some of the things that you have dealt with, or I guess each couple I know is is going to be, their particular issue. But like, what are some of the common things people come to you for? And I know you're in the San Francisco area, so I don't know if it's who you help more. Is it usually same sex or opposite sex, or like you guys are polyamorous or
Yeah.
bisexual?
My personal practice is pretty diverse. I work with a fair number of gay men in individual or couples therapy, but primarily I work with heterosexual couples, whether they are monogamous or polyamorous. Again, the vast majority of couples that I work with are cis, hetero, and monogamous, but I also work with diversity of all kinds.
Okay. And I know, since I brought it up and I haven't had too many episodes about, polyamory or bisexuality. I've had a couple. So I just, since you are someone that is both of those things, you want to just talk about how that came to be or why it works for you guys, or?
It came to be partly, I mentioned earlier that in my grad school career, I started taking courses in sexuality so I could understand some of my own behavior. So, in year two and a half of my marriage, I cheated twice back to back, one more emotional and the other more physical. And I'm usually a very ethical person. The honesty is very important to me. I recycle. I put carts away at the grocery store, even sometimes when they're not mine. Like, it is a big part of how I move through the world and how I think of myself. So for me to do this was very painful, of course, for my wife, but it was also very painful for me to witness this behavior, and I really wanted to try to understand it. Fast forward 12 years, I thought that I understood a lot more about my sexuality. I thought that I understood a lot more about my relationship needs. I thought I was doing really well. And kind of out of the blue and unexpected and not looking for it, I fell into a third affair. It was online, still, sexual and emotional in many ways, but it really surprised me. And as I went into trying to understand why that was, I started realizing that I really needed more connection, that I had a lot more love to give. I had worked out the sexual component of the differences between me and my wife a long time ago after the affairs, but the need for more connection, just laying on the couch and having my head rubbed, was still really there. And we had polyamorous friends and community. And after about a year and a half of recovery from that third affair and a lot of conversations and a wife who is not prone to jealousy, we tried it and we both experienced a lot of benefits from it. And now it's been about 10 years now that we've been open. I've been with my second partner for almost 8 years, and we've been living together in the same house for over 6 years.
Okay. And I know you said she doesn't have jealousy, so that definitely helps. But go ahead.
Much less jealousy than average, right? Okay. If jealousy is distributed on a bell curve, she's on the low end, not none, but less.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But how does that dynamic work? Do you do you all sleep in the same bed, or you take turns and one is kind of two primary beds? Or?
Yeah, we sleep in different beds. My two partners each have a bedroom of their own. My wife and I hadn't slept together for a couple of years in the same bed because she snores. And so we had learned to find connection outside of that for quite a while. And my second partner really, really likes and appreciates that. So in terms of in the bed sleeping, at night, going, not a euphemism for sex, but sleeping, I sleep in the bed with my second partner.
Okay. And all is well, or you have your moments, or
What's that?
I said, and all is well with that, or you guys have your moments, or like what are some things you've had to work through?
Yeah, when we moved in together, we got a family therapist for a couple of years to help us figure out how to cohabitate, how to navigate the parenting process. I think that very naturally, just as often happens with um, uh, couples that separate and then have a step parent come in, there was some concern about the parenting roles and what is the new parent's role in this child's life. And it's really been different for all three of our kids. Um, Sometimes I say the fourth hidden partner in our relationship is the house, because there are two different living spaces, one upstairs and one downstairs. My wife kind of has domain over one of those living spaces. My second partner more domain over the second. And so their different housekeeping styles don't have to bump into each other. They also have separate bathrooms that their different housekeeping styles don't bump into each other. So it's not all roses all the time, but generally we found a pretty stable set way of navigating the relationship with each other. They call each other partners, though they don't have a romantic or sexual relationship. And for example, they do a lot of things to care and tend for each other, like picking up medications or driving each other different places at times.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds pretty normal. I mean, I don't know why I called it normal, but you know what I mean? Like anyone else's thing. So it's just another person in the mix. So.
Yeah, it's relatively drama free most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then I know you also are an author. Do you want to talk about that? Because I know it goes back to helping men. We can get back into that after you talk about the book if you want.
Sure. So my book is called The Better Man, A Guide to Consent, Stronger Relationships, and Hotter Sex. It's not written specifically for polyamory or anything like that. In fact, I assume that most of my readers are in monogamous relationships and that they need good advice that works for people in monogamous relationships. But I really try to attend to the pain that men are in their relationships, feeling disconnected, wanting love, feeling love, but not always knowing how to deliver that, not always knowing how to manage the sexual aspects, and not knowing all the time how to get their emotional needs met. And I really walk the reader through a process of connecting to that pain, learning a little bit about sexuality and desire from a scientific perspective, debunking some myths about testosterone and manhood, looking at some of the research about that, and then helping the reader develop skills for managing his own emotions and then communicating skillfully in a relationship in a way that honors and protects his heart without just assuming that that means he needs to give in to everything that his partner wants or asks for.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to point out that there is a send us a text message at the very beginning of the description, and you can use that to send an anonymous question or comment. So I'd really appreciate it. All right. Thanks. Would you say men are affected by stress more, like sexually, than... Is it a factor? Like if a man is highly stressed, does that affect his sexuality or his libido or generally?
I'm not aware of any research that says that men are differentially affected by stress than women. Both genders have their desire frequency go up or down most people down with stress. Some people, often people with really high desire, sometimes their desire actually goes up under stress because they use sexuality as a stress reliever. And if that works for them and their partner, that doesn't necessarily need to be a problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And what is the number one thing men can do to improve their ability to date successfully?
Well, if we're talking about men dating women, I think it is probably to get in touch with their own emotions and vulnerability, and to understand, I guess second would be to understand that women dating men often have good and very legitimate reasons to be concerned about their safety with men. So approaching carefully, respectfully, with a lot of open communication about intentions and things like that can really help women to feel safe and then to begin opening up more.
Yeah, because I know a lot of women complain that men bring up sex too soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure if it felt safe, like you were saying, like if they did it in a way where like, I'm attracted to you, I would like to do this at some point, or like is there like a wording that you would suggest of how to bring that topic up early on or not, or?
So one of the things that I often kind of recommend is something that I've come to call the double green light process. So if he has gotten to a point where he's open and interested in a sexual relationship with a partner, for him to say, hey, I'm feeling really connected to you. I'd be open to beginning or talking about a sexual relationship when you are, but why don't you let me know? He's signaling his own green light. And then to not assume that his green light means that she's ready. Right, then to wait for her to give a green light, maybe to talk about what does it take for you to be ready to have a sexual relationship. Are you the kind of person that would let me know when you're ready, or are you the kind of person that would send me signals? What would those signals be? So now we're not just assuming that I know what the signals are, or assuming that we're coming from the same culture. In many ways, men and women are coming from very different cultures around these kinds of things. So taking all of the implicit, unknown uncertainties and just making them explicit does a long way to clearing up any confusion, miscommunications, and allowing each partner to be in tune with one another.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, as you would know too, since that's what you teach and you know this stuff science-wise. And so what are your thoughts on porn? I'm sure it matters if someone's addicted or just watching, or or some people think it's a bad thing, some people think it's healthy. What are your thoughts on?
So I look at the question, just when somebody asks it like that, as porn itself isn't inherently a problem. Any more than any other behavior that can become compulsive could be a problem, right? What do you think about shopping? Is it good or is it bad? What if people are addicted to it? Is that a problem? Well, similarly, pornography can show up as a problem in people's lives. The research shows that a lot of what makes pornography a problem in a person's life, including the compulsive cycles of trying to quit viewing and then viewing again in compulsive ways, really is whether the person has shame about viewing it, which can show up because of a lot of different things. Are you hiding that from your partner because your partner is grossed out by that idea? Maybe that's something that you need to talk with your partner about. Is it something that you have religiously based shame or culturally based shame around? Do you have a lot of conflict or shame about what you like to view and the fact that those things or those kinds of things turn you on? Now, there are some people who have compulsive behaviors because of depression. They're trying to cover their mental health issue, or ADHD because they're very impulsive, or the OCD, so they're very compulsive. And all of those different mental health causes of compulsive behavior look a little bit different, and they have slightly different solutions. In all of those cases, the problem isn't the porn, but it's the underlying mental health that is causing a problem with pornography, in the same way that we could imagine a person with ADHD or depression or OCD having a problem with playing too many video games. They're getting sucked into it. They're not giving attention to their relationships. They're not taking care of themselves. They're not coming out of a fantasy world into reality. They're not understanding the difference between the fantasy world and the reality. There are problems that can come up with porn, but often they're not related to pornography directly. For example, when people don't have good science-based sex education and they view the fantasies in porn as education. I often use the analogy, just because we watch action movies doesn't mean I want to, tie a fire hose around my chest and jump off of a building like they do in Die Hard, but I might still like to watch an action movie. If I understand the difference between real sex and pornography, it's not necessarily a problem. But the problem there is the absence of real sex education.
Yeah, I know, obviously, in this newer generations, they've had access to it, from as long as they're old enough to click. So how is that affecting men nowadays, would you say, or just the earlier access to it?
So doing a really thorough analysis, research-based analysis on this grand social experiment that we're engaging in is, I haven't seen definitive answers to the conclusions around it. What there is some evidence around already is that early childhood exposure to sexual material tends to increase the frequency of desire. And if we have an entire culture of boys who are experiencing exposure to pornography at 10, 11, 12, and an entire culture of girls that aren't exposed to sexual material until much older, if ever, we're creating a real divide between the two genders and their relationship to frequency and to sexual material. I think that can cause problems. It may be causing problems, but again, a lot of people will put out assertions about that without research to back it up. So I tend to be very cautious about looking at it and try to address individual problems to try to attend to the presence or absence of shame. And I also, just as Betty Dodson did for women, I really like to try to encourage men to reclaim the right of masturbation for themselves as a part of their own whole human sexuality. If that includes for him in his healthy behavior looking at pornography, I don't know that anybody else has a right to tell him that that's not okay. If he has a partner and he's trying to do things from pornography that isn't talked about with her about or with him about, that's a problem. But again, I see that as a consent problem and as a sexual education problem instead of it being a porn problem.
Yeah. I guess I was implying that when they learned sex that young from porn, they think that is their sex education. And then, like you said, they try all that stuff out without the consent. Because I've heard a lot of younger women are like not having so great experiences with dating and
absolutely. Debbie Urbanek, for example, has done some good research about choking showing up in sexuality. Mm-hmm. But why do we blame? I would just ask kind of this larger sociological question, right? Why do we blame the boys for viewing the pornography and for going out into the world without better sexual education? rather than looking at parents and making sure that they understand the imperative that they give their boys clear guidance about sexuality, what works and what doesn't, and consent, in that it would include differentiating what they might see in pornography from what real sex is. And why don't we protect boys and kind of impress upon parents or the larger media landscape the imperative to regulate the viewing of pornography by younger children better? I think those things are not a problem with the existence of pornography. They are a dysregulation and access problem that can be put on legislators and parents in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I agree. That makes sense. And I know a lot of schools are doing away with sex education, and then parents are afraid to talk about it. So it's and then I do know there's a site, I'm sure you're aware, the Make Love Not Porn.
Yeah, absolutely. We could talk about that for a moment. I'd also mention the Scarletine website, which offers teens science-based sex education and parents guidance on how to provide it. But yeah, Make Love Not Porn. I forget the creator's name, but she's a wonderful advocate for differentiating porn for a male gaze, as it's often created, and real sexual behavior between couples, including a really ethical model for subscribe for pay for the performers that I think is really revolutionary.
Yeah, I think so too. And I hadn't heard of the first one you mentioned. So if you want to talk more about that, I'm happy to hear as well.
I don't know that I have more to say about it. Scarletine is a website that provides science-based sex education for teens, and it's one that parents can also take a look at and get some resources for how and what to talk with teens about.
Okay. And it's Scarletine, the word scarlet with "ine" at the end.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah, just make a try and got it. All right. Well, or if you want to share how people can work with you, if they want to work with you or know how to find your book, all the things about you.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that now. Mm-hmm.
Working with me as a therapist is restricted to the state of California because my license is in California. So if you're interested in that, you could find me at drericfitz.com. It's DRERICFITZ.com. You could also find me on most major social media at Dr. Eric Fitz. Again, DRERICFITZ.com.
Okay. All right. And then are there any closing thoughts or takeaways you want to leave the listeners?
Yeah, there's a lot of the messages that exist about male sexuality are really negative. That men only want one thing, men's desire is out of control, men are sex addicts, men are porn addicts, men are masturbation addicts, men's sexuality is a problem. And I really like to just invite men to believe that male sexuality at its root is healthy and whole. And if you find that there's something that isn't working in your sexuality, for you to believe that something might have gone wrong somewhere, and that's okay to attend to, but to believe that the root and the core of your sexuality is good and beautiful will allow you to explore whatever traumas might have led, or pain or mental health issues might have led to dysregulation, and might allow you to reclaim the beautiful gift that your sexuality is to yourself and to any partners you might have.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Great information. And if you love this episode, be sure to tell your friends about it and rate it as well. And thank you again, Eric, for being on.
Glad to be here.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Frank Talk, sex and dating educates.